Hello, everyone. It's your girl, Gabrielle. Welcome to a brand new episode of Hot Topics. I am switching things up this year. If you watched my past few episodes, so we are streaming this live, right? So if you happen to be watching this in real time, you have a chance to talk to the guests, you have a chance to talk to me. So this is a chance for us to kind of be on our toes. So this is I am looking forward to this episode. I can't wait to get started. So, are you ready? I'm ready. Let's get started with the show. And welcome to Hot Topics. If you're not already from, if you, excuse me, if you are not already familiar with this broadcast, this is the broadcast where we like to talk about steamy topics, right? We like to do, we like to single out a topic and do deep dives into it, right? So we are a tutoring company, of course. So we can't talk about everything out there, but the topics we tend to focus on things like health, mental health, education, employment, anything in that purview. So once we get in that purview, then we like to get hot and steamy. So this is what the broadcast is all about. It is a chance to talk real talk about these steamy issues. So I look forward to this conversation. And again, this is being streamed live. So I hope you are watching this live with us. However, if you're watching this on the replay, that's okay. If you have any questions for the guests, leave it in the comments anyway. We'll do our best to get back to you. So let's get into the topic for today. So the topic of this episode for today is life as a divorcee. I'm just going to pause and let you see that topic. Once again, it is life as a divorcee. And how many people can comfortably talk about divorce, right? It's a hot button topic, right? It might be taboo, it might be shunned upon. So this is the series where we're going to put it all out there. We're going to rip open the door. We're going to open up those curtains and we're just going to let it pour on out because we are all about education and we are all about awareness. So we're going to talk about divorce, okay? And again, the topic is life as a divorcee. So I have a brave soul with me today who is going to help me with this conversation. Her name is Kristy Anne, and I look forward to bringing her to the stage. So let me tell you a bit about her. So who is Kristy Anne? Let me tell you who she is. So Kristy is a healthcare professional with over a decade of experience. She worked primarily as a nurse in the medical field for 8 years, then worked in other healthcare sectors. She is passionate about helping to reduce burnout in an industry prone to it through empowering a holistic approach to health and well being. She does this through self care practices defined by the individual. As explained in her upcoming book, The 30-Day Self Care Solution for Nurses, reduce burnout and build stronger boundaries and relationships, which we will talk about at the end of the show. So I am going to bring her to the stage right now. Hi, Kristy. How you doing today?
Hey, good, Gabrielle. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I am looking forward to this conversation.
How are you going? I know you're in America. I'm in Australia, so it's
Yes, we're getting international, so that's awesome.
amazing.
All right, so thank you for joining me today and having this conversation with me, and I look forward to diving deep into it. And I when you told me your story, I was definitely like blown away, and I wanted to get it out there because there's
Mm.
so many people out there, that are going through the same things, or they're already going through it, or they have been through it, or they have friends that are going through it. And this if one mind can be changed, then we did a lot. So I was definitely taken aback by your story, and I wanted you to share that
Yes,
story today.
it's a pretty full-on story, but I'm happy to share. I'm a very open book, so happy to share anything that would be of value to your audience. So,
Yeah, so I'm gonna have you dive right into it. So I'm going to pass the baton to you. So please go ahead and share your story.
okay, so yeah, life as a divorcee. I guess my journey started back in 2020 in the COVID era when COVID had just started, and I had just come out of a long period of clinically working as a nurse. I didn't know it at the time. I was burnt out. I was incredibly burnt out, actually. And I took 6 months off from my clinical post, went back to university and studied a different degree. But during that time, I sort of started questioning my marriage. And I had met my ex husband when I was 22 years old. I was 22, he was 25. We were both very, very young. Both, speaking from my own experience, I grew up in a bit of a dysfunctional family. And I guess I was looking for love in all of I wouldn't say the wrong places, because he definitely taught me a lot about myself. And helped me to grow as a human being. We've got a beautiful little girl together, and I've gotten some really great experiences out of it. But yeah, heading back into 2020, I remembered thinking it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. I'd been sleeping on the couch for about 3 weeks, and this was while we were all doing the COVID isolation. And I guess I don't know about a lot of other people, but I think COVID made everybody sort of go within and sort of start questioning their lives and digging in. Well, I know for myself, I'll talk about myself personally. I started questioning everything. I had worked with palliative care, people who were dying or people who did pass away, and I was one of the nurses who helped them to transition and things like that. So I guess it probably sounds a little bit morbid, but I was looking at my life from a perspective of, if I was to die tomorrow, what would my life look like if I was to be brave enough to do what I wanted to do for a change? And basically, what came from it was I had my ex-husband and I had discussed probably for a solid couple of years about our unhappiness, and I don't know, there was just some changes, I guess. And what I now know about the human brain a bit further is that, women and men, our brains change and evolve from about 35 onwards. And it's a biological process that I didn't even know was happening to me. So biologically, I was growing up, my brain was growing, and I was scanning everything. And so I guess I was looking into my future. I was about to turn 40, which I turned 40 in 2021. But I was looking at my future, and I'm asking myself, is this what I want for the rest of my life? And we had worked incredibly hard, been to counsellors and psychologists, and pretty much tried everything to save the marriage. But as it would turn out, I realized that I was a different person, and I had grown, and I wanted to take a different route in my life. And he was happy doing what he was doing, and I said, okay, well, let's separate and see how things go. And as time sort of grew apart, I was like, and my daughter, she started to change in better ways. Her behavior was becoming better, and I didn't realize that our children sort of model the behavior that we feed off to them. She was feeding off a lot of my anxiety and his anxiety and the arguments that we were having. So, we ended up divorcing end of last year, end of 2021, made the decision to finalise the separation, and was for the betterment of our family, of us as individuals, as parents, and for our daughter. So, it hasn't been an easy route. It's not been easy trying to navigate a new world, but it was one that was necessary for the happiness of all of us. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. So, I'm trying to think of how to phrase it. So, you brought up a couple things. So you're a nurse, and you were a nurse at the time, and you felt burned out. And are you saying that influenced the divorce in a way, and that you didn't really have the energy anymore to contribute to the marriage?
Yeah. So what I now know, like having had the reflection time, I didn't know at the time I was burnt out, because burnout when I started nursing wasn't really ever discussed. It was sort of just, deal with it. And unfortunately for me, I grew up in a dysfunctional family, and I didn't know how to deal with self-care practices, or, I grew up in the 80s and the 90s, and self-love and self-care was considered selfish here in Australia anyway. Looking after yourself was considered egotistical or narcissistic, or, that sort of thing. So, the burnout definitely, it didn't help the marriage, I'll be honest. I was interviewed last year, and, on reflection, me giving out. So basically me going to work as a nurse and giving out all of my energetic resources, and also witnessing the things that I witnessed. It'd be hard not to come out of that environment a little bit scarred emotionally, and then I would have to go home to be a mother and a wife, and I call it empty tank syndrome. I basically ended up with empty tank syndrome. My energetic, emotional, mental, physical resources I didn't have enough left over for my family, which, it resulted in the end. But I don't put all of the blame on the industry at all, because I think, we've got to take responsibility for our own lives. But it definitely didn't help. Yeah, it definitely did not help.
So talk to me about the changes in the marriage. So what was happening, or rather what was not happening as all this was going on?
If I'm honest, because of the things that I was seeing at the hospital, I would go home stressed out, because I wouldn't know I would want to tell him about, how a patient that I was really attached to had passed away, and they'd passed away with no family around. And because I'm such an empath, how sad that is. And I would look to him for support, but I guess he's a man, and men don't really deal with emotions very well. So I would look to him for support, and he would sort of just look at me a bit blankly, and I'd just be like, it got to the point where I stopped telling him anything, because he couldn't meet my needs emotionally. So I started getting therapy, but I guess it's sort of not feeling supported at home. It did drive a bit of a wedge between us, because, home is your safe space away from work. And if you don't feel like you're being heard or seen, then it starts to drive a massive wedge, I think, between relationships.
So just so I understand, so you felt like he wasn't understanding you as you were talking to him about the stresses of the job.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you think about it, for a normal, for a person who doesn't work within that industry, it would be really hard to understand what you see every day. Like, I used to make light of it through laughter and through humor, because it was the only way I could cope to get through it. But yes, I think with emotional things, I do realize that men don't have, a lot of men, especially here in Australia, they're not great with their emotional intelligence. So yeah, having a wife who is going through something quite emotionally taxing, I can't imagine it would be very easy, but it definitely it helps. You know, when you're married to somebody, you looked initially. I know for myself, I was very young when I met him anyway, and I used to think that he needed to meet my needs, but I didn't realize that it wasn't his job to meet my needs. It was my job to meet my needs. It was my job to learn what made me tick. It was my job to learn what made me get out of bed every day for that job and for my family and all that sort of stuff. So I think because we had met so young, I hadn't even understood who I was as a person at that stage, and I misguidedly thought that it was his job to meet my emotional and mental needs, which was probably a little bit unfair of me, but it's, you know, hindsight is 20/20, right?
So you wanted more from him that he wasn't able to give.
Yes. Yep. Pretty much.
So now, was all this happening as you were going through the burnout, or did something happen before?
If I'm honest, it probably all started when I had my daughter. So, because, you know, add that to the mix, right? You got to be a mother, you got to be a nurse, and you got to be a wife, and then you got to be something to yourself somewhere in there. And I'm sure that's pretty resonant for a lot of women. It doesn't matter if you're a healthcare professional or not. Like, if you're a mother and you work and you have a family, you have to find somewhere in there, somewhere in that space, time for yourself. And yeah, sorry, I missed the question. I just had a brain fart.
Well, I'm asking, all of these events that were happening, were they happening? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. So yeah, I guess it started to confound or compound after I had my daughter. So everything was all good, and then I had her, and so that added on an extra layer of pressure. You know, it's social pressure, environmental pressure, my own pressure as a parent and as a mother, because I did grow up in a dysfunctional family. I didn't want her to grow up that way, so I had to, you know, relook at my own behaviors around parenting and what I felt was to be true. So, you know, add that in. I guess it was just a snowball effect. Once I'd had her, it was a snowball effect of, this is how I wanted to parent her, and then he wanted to parent her differently. So I guess that's why I say it's not exactly the job. That was just another layer of what was going on underneath. I think, you know, we didn't have the parenting conversation. How are we going to parent our child or children? How are we going to live? We didn't sort of have those conversations. It was almost like we fell into the relationship. We fell into the marriage. We fell into buying a house. We fell into having a kid. It was kind of like this societal thing that you fall into, and it's like, this next, this next, this next, this next. But there was never any discussions of, this is how I want to parent, or this is how I'm going to parent, and you know, here are the boundaries and things like that. It was just doing. We were just doing and not actually properly discussing. I don't think there was no proper communication. I think it was just, this is what it's going to be and this is how it's going to be. You know, he's going to work full time, I'm going to work part time. You know, the societal roles, and deep within inside of me, I'm not what I would call a sheep. You know, I don't generally follow the normal lines. That's not really something that I feel comfortable in doing. So yeah, I think a lot of it, the breakdown started after we probably had her, because there was no real communication. Our communication was terrible.
So there's a couple things that I heard. It sounds like you had some ideological clashes when your daughter was born. Is that fair to say?
Yes, definitely. Yep.
And then I also picked up that the 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 significant life events just kind of happened, right? It wasn't any planning. So you didn't plan on the house. I'm not sure if you said you planned on the child. You didn't plan on having to parent. It sounds like there's a lot of things that just kind of happened and you weren't prepared for it. Is that fair to say as well?
Yeah, I mean, no, the house was planned, the child was planned, but I guess there was no real thought put into it. I think it was like, okay, so we get engaged and then we get married and then we buy a house and then we have a child, but there was no real thought put into it. I don't think. I think we just fell into it because that's what you do, right? It's like, I call it the Hollywood story of whatever. It's what I over here, I call it Disney, the Disneyland. You meet your future husband, you get engaged, you get married, you buy a house, you have kids, you get the white picket fence and the beautiful cars without actually putting any forethought into, is this actually what I really want for my life? And if it is, how is this going to look and how are we going to manage it and navigate it when things go, upside down? And we didn't have those conversations. So we just kind of, like, I guess you could make it be like we were robots. We became robots. We were just like, next thing, no thought, no. Yeah, it was quite, looking back on it, it's quite comical, but is what it is.
So would you say you were trying to, I mean, you brought up, you referenced Disney just now. So it sounds like there was a sense of you were looking for the fairy tale story. Is something like that?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah, Gabrielle. I briefly mentioned I grew up in a very dysfunctional family. I grew up in a very small country town where people, actually, there's a place here in Australia, it's called Nimbin, and it's a very well-known town filled with drugs and alcohol, and it's where all the hippie culture sort of eventuated here in Australia. But I grew up in a very dysfunctional family where alcohol abuse was around, and I often didn't feel safe, I guess you could say. And I moved out of home when I was 16 years old, so because of safety reasons. And so I guess I had nothing else to model off. So I guess I modeled my life off, this picture perfect family, which is what I wanted, but, didn't realize that it takes work, obviously, to create those things. And I was looking for a sense of safety and security, but also there was a lack of emotional sensitivity and security that I hadn't yet gotten to. So
So let's talk about that. You mentioned it a few times, your dysfunctional upbringing. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, sure. So my parents had me when they were 20, so they were quite young. That was back in 1981, so I'm an 81 baby. From what I know, I wasn't planned, and that must have been a bit difficult for my mother, I believe. Her and we've had my family and I still fractured, but my father was an alcoholic or is still. Used to hit my sister and I, and my mother, I think, has an undiagnosed mental illness, so she drinks alcohol to cope with that trauma. Basically, it's trauma. it was dysfunctional trauma that was passed down from their parents, then passed down to us. So yeah, I guess I was living in fear a lot of the time as a kid, but with a lot of therapy and understanding, I realized that they were only doing what they knew how to do because that's how they were parented. And so there's no blame from me or any of that. It's sort of has what made me as a person. But I now understand why I went into the relationship that I went into, because I was looking for safety and security, and I got it. But I got the safety and the security, but I didn't get the one thing that I really needed, which was emotional support, I guess. So it was like, what did I want? The lesser of two evils. I want both, but I can only get both. This is what I've realized now, that I can only get that both from myself. And that's what I've learned through the whole process.
Get it by yourself. How? What can you do to support your own needs?
So yeah, and I guess that's probably how the 30-day self-care solution started, because so basically while I was going through the burnout, I started to write. And I've always written. I wrote in journals when I was a kid, probably to make sense of my environment and things like that. So I used to journal a lot. And then as I was going through the burnout, probably the last couple of years of me being in, nursing and things like that, I pulled out my journals again and I started writing again and writing out all of my thoughts and feelings. And then I sort of went on this little, what I like to call this little holistic journey of self-healing, and sort of trying to make sense of why my environment was the way that it was, why I was continuously getting sick and stressed all the time. So a lot of it, I realized that I was expecting other people to meet my needs when I needed to be able to meet my needs first and actually know what I wanted first, to then ask people to reciprocate it. So I guess the thing was that I didn't even know what I wanted. All I knew was that I wanted to be safe and secure, but I didn't know anything else. I didn't really know, I thought that by meeting my own needs, it was selfish, or I was coming at it from a place of trauma response. But it's actually not. Like when you try to meet your own needs, you then know your inherent strengths and weaknesses. So I started to learn about my strengths and my weaknesses, and then going, okay, well, my strengths are these things, so I'm going to build on those, and I'm going to start filling up my own cup, like rebuilding after the burnout, rebuilding myself, learning what I love, what I like, what makes me happy, how and then sort of looking outside and of my relationships. I did a big deep dive into the relationships and friendships that I had, and realized, are these relationships meeting my needs or are they not? And I felt very selfish when I started doing that, because I thought, Kristy, don't be so selfish. People aren't objects. But it wasn't so much about that. It was that I was very, very good at giving out to everybody else, but I was never very good at asking for in return when I needed help. And I'm very terrible at asking for help, because I was always the helper as a kid, and that's probably why I went into nursing. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey. The self-care solution ended up becoming my healing book. It helped heal me. Writing helped heal me. So
Awesome. So let's kind of recap. So it sounds like you didn't in your upbringing, you always felt like scared. You always felt like in danger, with your parents being alcoholics and abusive. So I can imagine you didn't feel safe, walking on eggshells, and you didn't get that nurturing that you didn't get from your parents. And now you're craving it and you're seeking it. So you're seeking it wherever you can get, and then you find this man thinking, okay, he's going to give it to me, and it turns out it wasn't what you thought. Is that it?
Pretty much. He's a good dad. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, yeah, I'm a big believer in people come into your life to help teach you things about yourself. And he taught me a lot about myself. He taught me that I was expecting him to meet my needs, which wasn't fair of me to do. As a byproduct, he was expecting the same thing because he grew up in a very different lifestyle as well, very sheltered, very So he taught me a lot. He taught me a lot. There's no animosity or any of that stuff between the two of us, but I think pretty much I was just looking for love in all the places that I didn't have when I was a kid.
In all the wrong places?
Yeah, and I don't like to say that he was the wrong place because he wasn't. We had a pretty decent marriage, but obviously, like all marriages or relationships, long-term relationships, like there is that period of time where it's just so heated and you know you've got to do something about it and you don't because you're scared of being alone or you're scared of it's your financial future. Like, can I be alone? Can I be a single mother? All these things went through my head. You know, how am I going to pay my bills? Even though I'd been independent from when I was 16, it's not that I forgot about it. It was like, I've now got a child to worry about. And, you know, lots of things went through my head, like I don't have any family here. How am I going to find support? And I was scared because, I didn't have any friends and family around. But I knew that my happiness had to come first. And if it meant that I had to be alone, then I was okay with that. And as it turned out to be the best thing ever because I birthed a business out of it. I wrote a book. I made my mess my mission pretty much.
So you pretty much turned, I don't want to say tragedy, but you took an unfortunate situation and you made it your own.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I mean, I don't really like to dwell in like in things that happen or any of that. I like to look at them and go, well, the old me probably would sit in it and go, oh, you know, what, like screw my life and all. But no, like the me of now, I look at all of my situations as they've built me up to the person that I am today, and I don't discount my past. It is what it is, and all of those particular situations, unfortunate events or whatever you want to call it. I mean, we all go through tragedies in our lives and traumas and things. No one gets out of this life without experiencing it. And I like to keep a open mind about, you know, looking at it from an optimistic point of view instead of a pessimistic point of view and saying, okay, what are the lessons that I've learned from this and how can I make things better for my future?
Absolutely. All right, I want to get to this before we wrap it up. So, of course, you have a child, and you and your ex-husband decide to split up. Now you have to talk to your child about this. You know, so can you talk about that process?
Yeah. So we were so when we decided to split, it was the discussion was it's time to split, and we both agreed. There was no fights, there was no arguments. It was like, yeah, we know it's time to separate. So he and I sat down and discussed how we were going to do it, and we sat her down together, and we said, you know, how Mummy and Daddy have been fighting, and you know, things have not been great at school and at home, and you know, we apologized to her and we said, we're sorry that you had to see that and you had to witness it. It wasn't very fair of us to do that in front of you, around you, or near you. Mummy and Daddy don't make each other happy anymore, and we think it's best that we separate to make ourselves happy, but also to make you happy. And of course, she got upset because no kid. I don't think it matters how old you are, whether you're a child or a teenager or an adult. Nobody likes to see their parents separate, because we all like to have, you know, that happy little bubble of security and safety. But of course, she was upset about it, and we let her cry. And then we discussed, we put it in the positive. We just said, do you want to see mummy happy? And she said yes. And we said, do you want to see daddy happy? And she said yes. And I said, well, the only way that we can be happy is if we are no longer together. And I know that's really difficult to wrap your head around it, but mummy and daddy want you to have a better life. And if we stay together, your life is only going to get worse because you're watching us not like each other. And I want us to get to a point where we do like each other again, but as friends and as your parents. And so we just involved her in everything. I have a very, very open dialogue with her about everything. I've got an open door policy. Nothing's off the cards. And as a result of that, I don't hide anything from her. A lot of things were hidden from me as a kid, and I didn't trust adults as a byproduct. So I tell her everything within reason. I tell her everything, and I expect the same from her. And as a byproduct, it's actually been a very, really great thing because she now feels safe and comfortable to tell me things, and I don't have to ask or pry. And she's even said to me she feels very comfortable in being herself with me and things like that. So I think we've done a pretty decent job. It's never easy telling your kids that you're separating, no matter how old you are. So, yeah, and so far so good.
Awesome. So what did I want to ask? So I hear you say the word separated. I just want to clarify. Are you just like are you officially divorced with the paperwork and the signature, or are you just kind of apart?
No, it's officially divorced. We were officially divorced in November last year. But at the time when we were doing the discussion with her about separation, we were separated.
Okay. So now that you went through your experiences and you realized you were looking for the wrong things, how do you feel about dating again? How do you feel about getting married again?
I'm actually not opposed to it, funnily enough. But it's only because, so dating again, I mean, I'm just starting to now be ready for that and open myself up to that. But I was very intentional about choosing not to date after we got divorced or separated, because I wanted to make sure that I knew who I was, what I wanted for my life, and who I wanted in my life, especially having a child. You've got to think about those things. And I wanted to really deeply know who I was before I even let another person into my world, because, this is my life to live, and I've had enough pain and struggle in my life to realize that I don't need that anymore. So I wanted to know what makes me happy, and what, without somebody around. And I've done that, and I found I actually really love my life the way it is. And I want somebody more to complement my life, but not to be that dependent person who, if he's not there, then I'm going to be freaking out or something like that. So, yeah, I'm getting to that point where I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to get out there and see what's around. And definitely, I love marriage, funnily enough. I like that feeling of saying that I've got a husband and things like that. So, yeah, I'm definitely open to getting married again, and never say never, right?
Why not? Awesome. Right? Keep the options open. Why not?
Yep.
But, keep love open. All right. So let's start to wind things down. So do you have any final advice for the viewers watching this right now? Any words of wisdom that, excuse me, any words of wisdom that you'd like to share?
I guess, if you are in an unhappy marriage, work on yourself first, Work on the reasons why you're unhappy. It's never got anything to do with the person that's outside of you. It's always to do with what's inside of you. There's always something. This is just from my own personal experience and seeing some other friends around going through it themselves. Expecting a partner to meet your needs is unrealistic. Partnerships should be two people sharing a life together and having their own interests and hobbies and things like that. It should never be codependent on, but if that's what people, I'm all for you doing you. But for myself, staying in an unhappy marriage because you're too scared to be by yourself, or because you're too scared of what people think about divorce. I went through the whole, oh my God, I'm a divorced single mother and I never wanted to be that. I'd rather be happy than give a toss about the stigma. I'm a million times happier, and I'm glad that I made that decision. And, people do get stuck in unhappy marriages because, it's better the devil you know. I've heard people say that, and I was like, really? You don't think you deserve happiness? And I just think, choose your happiness over everything else. The rest will follow. Even if you're in a marriage, and if you start choosing your own happiness, you might find that partner that you had disconnected from, you reconnect with them again, which is amazing. But then you also might find, well, actually, no, my happiness isn't with you anymore, and I'm okay with that. So, yeah, I just think choose you first and the rest will follow. It's not selfish to choose you.
Thank you so much for sharing. So let me get your banner up right now. All right,
this.
you guys. So if you want to follow Kristy, you can follow her on her various social media platforms. She has 2 Instagram accounts, so take note of that. And visit her at her website, www.projectinbetween.com.au. Pay attention to that AU. And she is on Facebook as well. So her contact information is scrolling at the bottom. So definitely check her out and give her a follow. And I just want to make sure we get this in. She has a book that she wants to promote. So give me one second. I'm going to put up the picture of the book. Okay, I'm just going to make sure we see it. All right, fabulous. Okay, so there's the book right there. And let me get the little banner here. And the book is available for pre-sale right now. Kristy, can you tell us about the book?
Yeah, so the book, as I said, it was basically a deep dive into the inner workings of me, of finding my own happiness. And how I found my own happiness was just sort of not being scared to dig into the deep depths of my soul, as I like to call it. And I used some holistic healing methods. Instead of just looking to medical practices, I chose to look into meditation and spiritual healing and breath work and journaling, and just finding other, unique ways to help myself through the burnout. But also in the process, I learned more about myself, and what made me happy. And so this book is kind of the process that I followed to help me find joy and happiness again. So, yeah. Hopefully it would help other people, I'm hoping.
Hey, listen, you never know until you try. So definitely. When will the book become available?
So it's finished. It's been edited. As you can see, the book cover is done. So we just got to get it uploaded. It'll be going onto Amazon and all of the other online bookstores. Probably, where are we now? Probably by mid-Feb. Yeah, that's the hope. So if they sign up to the wait list, and then it will obviously come out with the exact date of release. But it'll be I'm being regularly posting on my socials and stuff of when I'm releasing it with the dates and stuff like that. So yeah.
And where can people, when it comes out, where can people buy the book?
Yeah, so it'll be on Amazon online. So, under the books that Amazon sells, and it'll be, yeah, like I said, all the online bookstores like Booktopia and all the other things as well. So it's pretty much a Google, but I would just say Amazon to start, and then go from there.
All right. And do you know if it'll be available to purchase in other countries?
Yes, definitely. So I'll be putting it on. So it'll be available to purchase internationally. It'll be in Kindle format and paperback format. So when you buy the book, you can select if you want it in Kindle format or paperback. And if you order it in paperback, then Amazon prints and distributes it for me. So nice and easy.
Fabulous, fabulous. All
Yeah.
right, we'll stop sharing. All right, so thank you very much. So definitely go out there, you guys, and get that book. All right, so Kristy, thank you so much for joining me today on the show. And I'm going to place you backstage. And all right, you guys, it is just you and I. So let me put up my banner here. And we have reached the conclusion of our episode. Thank you so much for joining us today. As a reminder, we are A Step Ahead Tutoring Services, and our contact information is scrolling at the bottom of the screen right now. Please check out our social media for more videos and clips, and don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and share. Definitely share this message with your family and friends. So whether you're watching this on Facebook, on Twitter, or on YouTube, definitely support us. Please follow and like and comment and do all that stuff. Speaking of comment, let us know what you thought about this episode by leaving a comment in the comment section below. And if you would like to learn more about A Step Ahead Tutoring Services, if you want to know about our workshops, our services, or all the things that we have to offer, again, our social media is scrolling below. Definitely check us out. And you can also visit us online at www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. And one last thing before I disappear.
Hey there, have you heard of us? We're a small team of tutors here at A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. We believe that education and information should be accessible to everyone, regardless of income, race, or creed. We're dedicated to making this happen, but we need your help. Please consider making a donation to our company. No amount is too small. Your donation will allow us tutors to remain employed, offer free and low-cost services, put on productions like this web series, and reach out to families nationwide. With your help, we can tackle the academic challenges of our students and the emotional, mental, and behavioral changes that result from these challenges. As a bonus, we can improve our communities in the process. Support us today. Note: we're a for-profit company. We're not a charity. Your donation may not be tax deductible. Please consult a tax professional.
Yes, and yes. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you at the next episode. Thank you for joining us. Signing off.